Hello, and thank you for tuning in. Before we begin our discussion, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items. My name is Elisa Zanola, and I'm head of events for the Fashion Scholarship Fund. As many of us are very familiar with Zoom, there are some great features that we'd love for you to utilize tonight. There's the chat box. Feel free to send comments to the panelists as the session is happening. And there's also the Q&A box. As questions come to mind, send them in and we'll answer as many as possible during the Q&A segment of the session. And now I'd like to introduce our Executive Director, Peter Arnold.
Thank you, Elisa. Welcome everybody to, I think it's the fourth Workforce Preparedness course in our Summer Scholar Series. Tonight's is themed A Hard Look at Design and the 2022 FSF Case Study Prompt. I'm especially pleased to welcome our esteemed panelists, first of whom is friend and supporter, Elizabeth Giardina, who's the Vice President of Design at Proenza Schouler White Label. Welcome, Liz. Thank you for joining us. Together with Liz, we've got Tori Gibbs, who's the Design Director, 9 West Exclusive Brands at Kohl's. Welcome, Tori. And we have Lingenfelter, who's the 2020 FSF Scholar from Jefferson University, who submitted a case study submission on design and product development and was a winner. Welcome, Kinley. And finally, Jenny Smoss, who's a 2008 FSF Scholar from Kent State University and the author of this year's Design and Product Development Case Study Prompt. Welcome to all of you. I'm going to jump right in, Liz and Tori, just to give our audience a little bit of context as to who you are and what you do and how you got there. So maybe Tori, if you want to jump in and introduce yourself, and if you can, give us a little bit of flavor of your journey so far.
Sure. Thank you and welcome. Hi everyone, I'm Tori Gibbs. I've had an interesting journey and one that I've been very blessed because as I probably knew I wanted to be a fashion designer since I was 7. So my journey started very early on. But fast forward, I am a graduate of FIT in Michigan State University. And my first time being in New York and experiencing fashion in the industry was when I actually got accepted to FIT. I apprenticed with a woman who was a model, a designer, and a professor at the age of 16. And I learned to draft patterns and all that good stuff. But I got my first job at Dana Buchman. And one of the things I would tell everyone is just to be really open to your first job. I was an assistant fabric researcher, but that job led me to my first dream job, which I was an assistant designer at Kenneth Kohl. From there, I really kind of found myself as a designer of footing, and I went on to be the head designer at Tibby. And from there, I shifted and had my own collection for about 3 years. And I found myself in venturing into the contemporary market, but for the mass retailers. So I spent about 5 years at Sears, and then my next stop, which I've been for 8 years at Kohl's. And I've done a myriad of things at Kohl's, but I'm now the design director of 9 West and really adjacent to the contemporary and young juniors brands there.
Thanks, Tori. Hey, Liz, can you just share with us a little bit of your background?
Hi, I'm Liz Giardina. I'm the Vice President of Design at Proenza Schouler White Label. I'm originally from St. Louis, Missouri. I actually went to college in St. Louis. I went to Washington University where I studied sculpture. So I was not a fashion student. And I was always kind of deciding if I wanted to do fine art or if I wanted to be an architect or if I wanted to be a designer, a fashion designer. And I grew up dancing. And as I got more into dancing, the costumes became more interesting to me. So I sort of naturally gravitated towards fashion design. When I graduated, I moved out to Los Angeles. At that time, the brand Halston, I don't know if you guys have seen the recent TV show, but the brand Halston was trying to revive itself. They hired a designer out in LA. So I started working for him, and then I moved to New York. I worked for Halston for a number of years as several different companies worked on relaunching that brand, and I started the Halston Heritage Collection for them. I then left and joined Derek Lam. At Derek Lam, I launched the 10 Crosby Derek Lam collection, and I did that for about 6 years, and then I left and I joined Proenza Schouler. I joined Proenza Schouler to help them with the commercial collection and to launch new product. About 2 years ago, we launched this Proenza Schouler White Label division, really kind of realizing that we needed the casual expression of our Proenza Schouler customer, and we needed slightly lower price point product that was a little bit more relaxed in its feel. It's developed beautifully. It's really growing. We just launched handbags this week. So now I oversee that division within the brand.
So Liz, you're the vice president of design. What does that mean to be the vice president of design? What's your role?
That means I kick off every season. So I develop what the concept is. I oversee all design aspects from drawing to, any sort of 3D work. I oversee all of the fittings, but then I also need to work with other divisions within the brand. So I work very closely with product development and production to get the product correct through the development process and through the production process. I work very closely with our CEO, our head of sales, and our head of merchandising to make sure the collection is what they need for their business needs. And then I also do some work with our marketing department and our e-com team for selling events, like live selling events, et cetera, to sort of help the product reach its customer and kind of be a little bit of the personality within the brand.
Got it. And what does your team look like your immediate design team?
Our design team is really small. So it's myself, I have a knit designer, I have a wovens designer, I have a handbag designer, and then we generally have like a freelancer supporting us. We'll have a number of interns. And then I work very closely with the product development team. There's a woman that oversees product development. There's a sourcing person, a technical designer, and an assistant on that team. So there's about 6 of us that full-time work on White Label.
Got it. Tori, I imagine your context is maybe a little bit different, but maybe not. So as a design director for a label at Kohl's, what does that role entail for you?
Yeah, so my role really entails owning the vision of the brand. So I am the visionary, everything that really, it is very similar in some respects to what Liz is doing, really owning the conceptual point of view for the season, really making sure the customer voice and messaging is carried through from start to finish. And then we talk a lot about outfitting and wardrobing and how we really want that outfit to show up to the end use as it gets into the store. So owning that look once the product is designed is how it's going to show up. What's that trend message? What's that story that we're going to tell the customer, and owning that throughout the process.
And so for you, a team that you work with in design is comprised of whom or how many?
I have a team of 7. Those are 7 designers. I would say half of them are assistants, half of them are associates. And then that 7th one is usually a designer or senior designer who's the right hand to the director. And then in addition to that, 3 artists. One is an assistant, and then you have 2 mid-level artists who do all of our CAD, graphics, textile work.
Got it. And as Liz said, in her team, there's a knitwear designer, a wovens, there's handbags. Does that work the same way with you category-wise?
Yep. So we're broken down by category. We have category leads for all those, inclusive of denim as well for us, and outerwear.
Got it. Liz, you touched on this a little bit in terms of teams or the cross-functionality of what you do. Can you just take us maybe from concept to consumer with a particular collection or season, like what that means and who you might interact with from the concept to the finished product that's then on?
Yeah.
Thanks.
So when I'm thinking about a season, I start really far in advance because I don't like to rush through the process. So I start thinking about a collection months before I present it to Jack and Lazaro. So the initial part is really within the design team. And honestly, a lot of it just comes from me, what I'm interested in. And then from there, I do a bunch of research and I kind of develop what the theme is for the season, present that theme, and then I'll do what I call concept styling. So I'll take 1 to 2 days. And again, this is just within the design team of deciding like what the actual 3D feel of the collection is going to be like. So, what the silhouettes are with vintage clothes, with my clothes, maybe my husband's clothes. I drape things, I take swatches and Photoshop them. And then from there, I'm really engaging our product development and sourcing teams. Like, what is the fabric story? These are the things I want to do. What factory do you think will do it the best? Can we take this fabric and move it to this factory so we can combo these 2 things for these garments, etc. And then after I've sketched the season, worked with Jack and Lazaro on finalizing what the styles are, then I really move into a process of dealing with the business part of the company. So I present to our CEO, our head of sales, our head of merchandising. I show them what we're planning for the season. I get the feedback from them, and I just make sure that their feedback is incorporated in what we're doing for the season. And then it's just kind of like back and forth between the creative part of the business and the more business oriented. So fitting, going through the fitting process, looking at a collection, and then going back to the business end and saying, hey, what do you think about what we did? And just doing that kind of back and forth twice, because we'll generally do 2 fittings per season. And at the end of each of those fittings, I want everyone to say like, okay, we like what we're working on. We're ready to move on to the next phase. So by the time we're done with our second fitting, when we're waiting for our salesman samples to arrive, everyone is happy. They feel like they have what they need from a creative standpoint and also from a business standpoint. So that when we receive our samples, we know that, you know, we'll have a small drop-off rate, maybe 15% of the collection that doesn't execute, but we really have what we feel like we need.
Got it. Tori, is that a similar experience that you have from concept to consumer, or is yours a little different?
It's a little different in the sense, I think with the corporate structure of Kohl's, at the kickoff of my season, I have to have a huge, it's pretty robust strategy session, and it really entails design bringing together a point of view on what's next and new, but the merchants come with all their financials and what they really can afford, you know. So if I have big pipe dreams on doing stuff, and then we kind of have to prioritize what it is based on where the business is and get sign off from our leadership team, which includes our SVP of merchandising, SVP of design, and then my direct boss, the VP of design, and his counterpart. But it's interesting. And as a creative, it was a huge shift when I took on this role, because I never had to be as responsible or engaged in financials at the beginning of the season as I have been in this role.
Mm. And do you go through the same cycle of maybe 2 rounds of presenting and then editing and presenting again, or is it just one?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a very robust high level conceptual. It's like, that's when everything is pretty and beautiful and all things is like, you know, aiming for our North Star. And then we kind of drill down one level, and that's when our sketches, we bring everything to life, really by category, by individual style. Again, we're carrying through that outfit and building that outfitting story throughout the process. And then similar to Liz, we also have about 2 rounds of fits as well. And something that I'm very passionate about, so I spend a tremendous amount of time during the concept part, is the fabric development and fabric R&D. So really doing, you know, doing that pre-development stage, putting in a lot of tailoring, seeing what's executing, what's not, and then taking it from there. So you have the reference point when you get to the concept 1 and 2.
Got it. This is a slight departure on the questions, but you both described, you know, journey is probably not the right word, but certainly you've worked for a variety of different brands and businesses along the course of your career. Knowing what you know today and what you've experienced, what would be the best advice you could give your younger self, which is essentially some of the students that are listening in tonight? Liz, I'm going to throw that one to you first.
Okay. I think, you know, it's really important to understand that working in any business just entails a lot of hard work. And just because we're in a sort of more glamorous industry in some aspects, there's a lot of like down and dirty hard work. I always say once an intern, always an intern. Like, you're always going to be working hard, and you need to realize that. I spent a lot of my 20s like really committed to being a better designer. So I always say to people, like, work hard, but don't be too stressed out. Like, things will start to evolve and happen, you know, just have to mature and understand kind of your direction a little bit better. I also think it's you're a designer. I mean, Tori, like, we're in our positions because we have good instincts, and like, you need to learn to trust your instincts. And there's a reason that you're in that room. Like, there's a reason somebody's like, oh, what do you think, you know, Liz? And it's like, oh, I think this. So say what you think, and don't be afraid of like somebody saying, no, I disagree, because what we do is completely subjective. And then I would say my last piece of advice is everybody wants to be around like the positive, happy, fun, enthusiastic person. So like, always be that person in the room. Like, I don't care what's going on in your personal life, but like, you roll into work like really positive and really happy, because I just feel like doors have always opened for me, because people are like, oh, I love working with you. Like, you're a fun person to work with. We laugh in meetings, we have fun, we enjoy talking about product. So yeah, I've always like asking people like, what are you doing? What's cool? What's happening? What are we talking about? You know, like just enjoy making clothes. I mean, it's a fun process.
Nice. Knowing you both the way I do, I think you have a very similar approach to that.
Yeah.
But Tori, is there any, advice to a young Tori that you'd want to impart?
Yes, I mean, specifically to a young Tori, and I can echo everything that Liz said about the journey, like in the advice, but to young Tori, I would say be bold and trust your instincts. I think older Tori has learned to trust my instincts over time, but in my 20s starting off, it's like you kind of, you kind of know, but then you kind of shy away from it a little bit. And I just wish I was bolder in my instincts and just going for it out of the gates instead of being tentative in those younger years. And again, doing it all, graciously too. I work hard, I play hard, laugh hard, but there's a graciousness in it, but just being bold and approaching design for sure.
Yeah, I like that you could be gracious and bold at the same time. They're not mutually exclusive. So, I know we've got an audience that wants to be walked through the case study prompts. So, and I'm going to turn this over, Kinley, to you and to Jenny, just maybe to briefly introduce yourselves and put yourselves in context, and then we can pull up the prompt and walk through and get Liz's and Tori's thoughts on it as you walk us through. So maybe Kinley, if you can just let us know a little bit more about you, and then Jenny, and we'll take it from there.
Okay, so my name is Samlingenfelter, and I am a 3-time FSF scholar, and I go to Thomas Jefferson University in fashion design. My background, I come from a very big family in a very small town in Indiana, and I have 9 siblings, and my dad was the only one that worked growing up because we were all homeschooled, so my mom took care of us, and so I don't come from a lot of money. So my first driving factor for the FSF was like, oh wow, here's this really cool scholarship that I can apply for that's gonna get me money to help pay for school, because I do that entirely on my own. So that was like my main driving factor. And then as I got into it and learned more about the actual organization in and of itself, it was so much more than that. And I think that the opportunities that I've been given have just been like unbelievable. Like, one, just having the support was like so significant, because I come from Rochester, Indiana, middle of nowhere. And when I told people, who I wanted to be and what I wanted to do when I grew up, they were all just kind of like, oh yeah, good luck, like finding a real job. Like that's, good luck. My cousin did that at Purdue, and, they live with their family still, stuff like that. So that was very discouraging. And I think when you get to college, you meet so many other incredible designers and so many talented people. And it can be like, okay, yeah, I know I'm good, but like, what do I have to offer? What makes me different from anyone else? And I think the FSF does an amazing job of like help giving you that confidence of like, you are, there are tons of other talented people, but like you bring something unique to the table, and, let's figure out why you do that. And so they, like once you win, one, it's an amazing project for your portfolio. Like every job interview that I've ever had loves to see that huge project, because it is very taxing. Like it's a big project, but it's so worth it. It's such a significant piece to have in your portfolio. And then on top of that, like once you go to like the ceremony, you get opportunities to speak one-on-one with industry professionals and get, job interviews and that type of thing. And I think that having that ability was so significant. And then, after all of that, like I ended up landing a job with Greg Norman. I'm a golfer, so I was really excited about that. And then last year COVID happened, and that whole like they didn't have the ability to have an intern during COVID. And even this summer they still didn't have they're still recovering from the financial setback. And but I've been able to remain in contact with them, and FSF has helped me talk with multiple other brands and professionals. And, they even reach out, they'll send emails and be like, how are you doing? Like, have you gotten an internship? We can help send some out to you. And like that kind of thing, having that support is so significant, because as a designer with so many other amazing designers, even just in the US, you can feel like, how do I get out there? Like, how do I get that exposure? How do I get that? So being a part of the organization in and of itself is just incredible. And I remember even like my second year winning, we were in New York and we were, doing kind of like the intro panel to like the scholars and that type of thing. And it was like, I think maybe the first year of the accelerated grant, the big favorite one. And the owner of that, was talking up like on stage. And I remember just being like so starstruck about that and just being so inspired. And I ended up starting a company with my sister this year during COVID, which is like all crazy stuff. And then I applied for it, and like this year didn't win. That's totally fine. Like I'm pretty young. But the amazing thing is you can apply every year as an alumni. The opportunities don't stop after you win the scholarship. Like there's just never ending opportunities. So I can't I have so much I could say about it. Like it's just amazing, and it's totally worth applying for, even if it's a big project, even if it's taxing, even if, you have your classes and your sports and you're an RA, or you have a job off campus, and it's a lot, but it is so unbelievably worth it. And I can't stress that enough. Like it's worth applying. It's an amazing organization. Sorry, I talk a lot, but that's like the basic.
That was great. Thank you for sharing all that. And it's nice to hear. So thanks. Jenny, so maybe, you want to just quickly introduce yourself, and we'll have Elisa pull up the case study. I think you're muted, Jenny.
Okay.
There you
now,
are.
Good?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. As I said, my name is Jenny Smoss. I was a 2008 FSF scholar. I've been involved with the organization ever since. I've been a judge for about 10 years now, attending all the different events throughout my entire career. And I 100% agree with Kinley as far as what the FSF can do for you, not only as a student, but also as a professional, and just keeping you in touch and being able to broaden your network and introduce you to people that you may never realize that you could have met, or somebody that you're connected to, connecting your other friends who are looking for opportunities, growing the conversations you can have with people. It's all fabulous. So 100% agree with Kinley on that. My current position, I'm a director of design and merchandising here at Crest Mills. We do soft home. I made a transition from hosiery. I was doing hosiery for a long time, had the opportunity to do runway legwear for Betsy Johnson and Anna Sui. So that was super fun. And then transitioned into soft home 6 years ago. So, and I agree a lot with what Tori and Liz were saying in regards to the role as a director. I have a team of 5. My process is a lot the same way. And Tori, I had to chuckle a little because it's always the big dream in the beginning of the season. And then, it's like trickle, trickle, trickle. But, finances are huge. And I think that's kind of how we build this case study. As the author of this case study, that's a huge part of it, is we want this to be a realistic idea, a realistic project that you can actually go into the workplace and say, and as Kinley said as well, take this to a future employer and say, look at the way that my brain thought about this in a real world view, and look at my problem solving ability, and when we transition into the prompt, I can kind of explain that a little bit more because I'm getting off subject. But yeah, so it's nice everybody had such good points, and 100% agree from being in each of the different places. I think everybody had really wonderful advice in terms of FSF and directing, design, and et cetera, et cetera.
Great, thanks, Jenny. So thanks, Elise, for pulling up the deck. I think, Jenny, I'm going to turn the first slide after this cover to you, just to walk us through a little bit the objective and some other call outs that you might want to have on this first slide. Thanks.
Yeah. So as I was saying, I kind of transitioned into this with my introduction. So again, the whole idea when we're building this is, what is a real world applicable challenge, if you will. We don't say problem, we say a challenge. So what's a real world challenge that we're seeing in the industry, and what do we really need to focus on, and how do we move forward with that in a successful way? So obviously one of the biggest things is this pandemic and how the industry has changed since COVID, and also just the post-COVID consumer, because a lot of these changes that happened during the pandemic are going to continue to affect our industry going forward. The consumers have really changed the way they look at design, changed the way they look at clothing, and the way that they shop. And this is going to be something that we're going to see as time continues, not just now. So, as designers, it's, we're really the base of a solution, that it comes from design. Yes, it has to be, merchandised correctly and priced correctly, but if the product isn't there and it isn't practical and doesn't make sense, then it's not going to succeed no matter what. So, the solution really starts with us. And so that's kind of what we were thinking about in terms of this whole prompt. And another thing that I would say too, that is huge, and as a judge, I look at this, don't always go for the easiest concept. If you're doing this project, you're putting the time in it, go for it. Pick something that's a little bit more outside the box. Pick somebody that you can actually see this working for in the real world. Who could you walk into their office and say, I have an idea, and it works. But it's not always the most, again, not the easiest, most in your face one. A lot of the times, most successful prompts are the ones that are, really well thought out and a little bit more of a challenge, because we want to see your creativity and how you're going to come up with a solution for this. So really bear that in mind as you're planning, because as judges, we really, really appreciate that. So really bear that in mind. And then when you're doing the existing brand or retailer of your choice, again, this year, we're really not saying you have to do an apparel collection. There's so many different aspects, especially with COVID too. All these different categories have really come to the forefront as being what people want more and more and more. As I said, I'm in home. My industry has blown up this year. It's crazy. I can't keep up. We're so lucky, but I mean, the home industry is massive right now. So feel free to really kind of look in there and dig deep. Is it footwear? How do you solve something for footwear? And, what are we looking for from going from home and then, popping back and forth and having to go to meet somebody, etc. So you don't have to do apparel. If you want to do apparel, awesome. But, we're just letting you know that you do have the freedom for that. And when you're looking at it could be like a brand expansion. You can do something, because this is the other part of it that is really important for design. And, as Liz was saying with Proenza Schouler, like they have a diffusion brand, and same thing, Tori Kohl has done a lot with a bunch of different big brands where they have diffusion brands. So if you feel like there's a big brand that maybe they need to branch off and do a brand that way, you can also approach it in that manner. And then also just bear in mind, kind of what I'm talking about it too, is when it says, will it be a valid driver for retail going forward? That's kind of what I was saying as well. Does this make sense? It has to be applicable to the real world, and will it drive sales, and will it be a sales making line, and does it make sense for that area? And then two, as we were talking about for COVID, and as I was talking about like waist up, anything with video conferencing, if you need to look great from the waist up, but then run after your kids, maybe like run your dog outside real fast, come back in and throw your glasses on and floof your hair and look great for a big meeting, kind of think about how this can be comfortable, but professional, transitional. What does the consumer really want right now? And how is that wardrobe really changing? And then, yeah, so if you want to think about waist up, it doesn't necessarily have to be there, but head to toe, what really works. We also discussed like capsule wardrobes, because everybody is kind of trying to be smarter and more sustainable about how they're shopping. So these are all things just to bear in mind as you're doing this collection, as you're choosing your retailer. And that's pretty much it on that.
Thanks, Jenny. I'm just going to move forward to the next slide, Elise, if we can ask Liz maybe for any thoughts you might have on understanding your consumer from your vantage point.
Yeah, I mean, just to back up for a second, I think it's really important when you're putting together your deck, just because I look at a lot of work, that your deck is super beautiful and looks really modern. Like I always say to designers and design students, like look at other people's Instagrams and look at, websites, and look at the way things are laid out and the way that you consume visual information, and think about that as you're putting together your deck. Because it's really important that like, as you open this and you look at it, that it's like you're sort of enthralled and you want to see what's in there. And I think that even goes into like aspects like this, like knowing your customer. So I had this friend, and he worked for Michael Kors for years and years. And he would tell me, he would bring Michael Kors like a stack of 50 sketches, and he would be like, she's wearing that, she's not wearing that, she's wearing that, she's not wearing that. So I think it's really important for you to say like, who is this person that I'm designing for? Something that I've done for the last two brands I've worked for, when I've helped them develop sort of brands within the brand, is really like think about who is the customer. What does she look like? How does she dress? How does she live her life? How does she vacation? How does she spend her free time? What is she buying and why is she buying it? What really drives her to like give her money to product? Like, why is she spending her hard-earned money on product? And you really want to put yourself inside of that customer. For me, it's a woman. It can be whomever you're designing, whatever product you're designing. But it's very important that you really understand the motivation for this person to spend their money. And that needs to be very compellingly presented.
Perfect. Thanks, Liz.
Mm-hmm.
Elise, I'm going to turn this over, I think, once you cue that up, to Tori, who probably has something to say about mood boards and inspiration. Tori?
Yeah, so, when you think of your inspiration board, and for me, at Kohl's or any company I'm working for, you truly, you want to inspire, and there's two people two audiences I'm really trying to inspire, and we'll probably get to this later on, but I have to collaborate really closely with my merchant team. So I got to inspire and engage her, or him. And in addition to that, inspiring the customer as well. Want to inspire, engage them, take them on the journey, really take them, allow them to escape to the next season that you're designing for, whatever that mood, that vibe or season that you're going for. And really being able to showcase and articulate that through, again, beautiful imagery. There's nothing that gets someone in the mood for, an impulse buy or shopping, but, beautiful things. And you want to make sure your imagery connects back and has a seamless thread to your color palette. So I love color. That's one of the things I've been known for in the industry. And, really understanding too, goes back to that customer, understanding what your customer likes too, but then understanding what's going on in the world around. There's a lot of color that kind of connects back to the mood and the temperament of just things, all things global. You want to be able to tap into that depending on what your business product category is as well, and make sure that you can do a nice visual dance between the both of what, how you can inspire that customer, but connect back to what's going on culturally as well. And one of the things too that kind of gets me going at the beginning of the season when you think of inspiration is just, having a sketchbook, a notebook. I never throw away anything, but just, get your thoughts going. Nothing. There's, again, Liz touched on this earlier. Everything is almost subjective in what we do. We're creating, we're ideating from scratch. So really just getting that vibe going too, with whatever product category you have. But the critical thing too, in business, because at the end of the day, we want to sell everything, is making sure that there's a seamless thread throughout, that you're starting to tell the story. The inspiration board is going to be the anchor for how you bring your collections to life.
Thanks, Tori. Kinley, I'm going to ask you just to talk about showcasing your collection on the next slide.
Yeah, so for this, I even that bottom fabric board is actually mine from one of my from my last project. And I think what's super important is to kind of trust yourself with this. Like for me, I oftentimes get really feel really suffocated with rules. Like it stresses me out. Like am I following close enough to these rules? Like, and do I have everything in this fabric board that I need? Like, is it done right? But I think as a designer, you get to decide what right is a little bit. And I think that it's really important with these projects to trust your gut and like, no, I want to put, like me, I put like 5 fabrics in my board because, I didn't need anything more than that. I didn't need enough or any more to explain my concept. And I think that trying to have a traditional fabric board or a fashion designer fabric board or that type of thing can really clog up your creativity. So just allowing yourself to take the reins and trust your designer intuition is really important. And then as for like the layout of your board, I totally agree with what Elizabeth said, like you looking at people's Instagrams or that type of thing, like figuring out what inspires you, what do you think is beautiful, catches your eyes, draws you around the page, and doesn't get you stuck on one thing. So having a color palette that matches totally is really important, and making sure that you are truly, laying it out in a concise way, but still having like that beautiful board that draws someone's eye in is really important. And then like, again, you start out with a concept board, so you get to decide everything after that. I like to start with my concept board because that really dictates everything. Like I start with a concept board before I start with my concept research, because really you're doing the research in maybe a Pinterest board that you're saving. You have all the research there, but it can get really busy as a designer. You don't have one page of research. There's no way you have one page of research. You have endless research. So start with a board that you feel really confident about, like this describes my concept, and then go in and pick your research. Be like, okay, yes, I did all this research, but this looks really beautiful with this. And, this describes this, how I got this silhouette. That type of thing is really important and will kind of narrate the rest of your pages and allow you to be more concise with what you're showing and how you're showcasing it.
So 2 seconds from a judge point of view on that too. And Kinley, I love the way you described it. And then going back to what Tori was saying about your inspiration board, I think that it makes so much sense, because as a judge, we want to see it be cohesive from start to finish. We don't want to see it be disjointed. We want the story from your concept board to go into your fabric board, because your concept board is supposed to be talking about where you're going with your fabrications. So absolutely. And also, like cleaner and more concise. Sometimes bear in mind that like less is more in a way sometimes, because for a judge, if there's too much going on the page, it just gets very muddied. So, also have a really strong editing eye when you're doing everything, and just make sure that the clarity and conciseness of your boards really rings true, and that we're getting a vibe for your whole story within your board. Just wanted to add that.
Thanks, Jenny. Liz, I'm going to ask you to just talk to technical flats and illustrations on the next slide.
Yeah, I mean, I've always worked for design-led businesses. So for me, drawing is really important. And it's really important because I've always worked for people that draw really, really well. So I think that when I started working in fashion, because my degree was not in fashion, I was like, oh my God, like you have to really be able to draw a product to convey your message. So I think it's important that your illustrations are very clear. And then if your illustrations are more gestural or expressive, that's totally fine, as long as you're getting across the message of what the look and the attitude is. But then your technical flats really help like hold up your illustrations and help hold up the creative aspects of it. I like to have flats that have attitude. I don't really like a flat. I mean, every company is different. I like you to sort of see the dimension of the clothes and to really kind of see the clothes like come to life. I always feel like your drawings and your flats are your opportunity to have the product made as best as it can be made. And if your things are sort of buttoned up, then their issues don't really lie with you, they lie with the people that are making the clothes. So I always feel like as a designer, it's your job to make sure you represent the product as best as possible. So in this project, you're not actually making these things, but you're conveying a message. You're saying this is what it's going to look like. So you really want those drawings and those flats to display that. I've also seen people work in interesting ways, like maybe they don't draw very well, so they do collages. Like there's other ways of representing product or sort of, rendering product that could be helpful for you.
Thanks. It's actually, I'm looking ahead at one of the questions, which is, do I have to be good at drawing to participate in a case study competition?
No.
Yeah.
No, I mean, you know what I do when I do my 3D like concept styling, we do this exercise where we'll do like photoshops of things. We'll say like, oh no, we're going to take that garment or we're going to make it longer or whatever. And I've seen people present books where they just have photoshops, like, they do like a styling exercise and they do photoshops, or they take pictures and they photoshop them and like kind of collage together looks, and it can look really cool.
Nice. Good. Tori, I'm going to turn the next slide over to you about communicating the story.
Yeah, so this is so critical, and it kind of, goes to everything we were just talking about, because it goes back to that customer. And in Kohl's, our roadmap is what we call a brand profile, and it's everything and anything about our customer, how really she lives and breathes her lifestyle. And that is, again, our jump off point for the season. And then when we get to the end of the season and how we really bring that story to life in the stores and really bring it to the customer, we want to make sure that that message is threaded through the entire way. So as the collection comes together and we start bringing to life the outfitting story, And we're really offering her a solution where we're giving her a new wardrobe solution for the season, making sure that that really comes through. So when you think about our mannequin presentation, or if it's apparel, it could be a presentation, a great table presentation, or if it's a beauty product, but making sure that that storytelling is threaded through. So if you did have this like great burst of primary colors that was really going to bring this jacket assortment to life with this customer that has this active lifestyle, you want to make sure when you get to the end result that it really is embodying how she's going to be wearing, living, and breathing that active lifestyle versus it being something that's very structured and buttoned up that looks like she may be going to the office. So always remembering really what you're solving for, and then making sure throughout every touch point of the process, really from that, it really starts from that pre-development when you go into prototyping and tailoring, and then when you get into your customer messaging and the voice, and even now you have the extra layer of how you're going to communicate and market that through the social channels too, that is truly just really clear. And that's why I said, in my role, that vision at the beginning from design is so important. And what I get measured on, what allows me to keep my job every season, is if the vision that I started with matches the collection and the vision I end it with, then I get to keep my job another season. So that's something that you want to make sure you can connect your ideas to when the product is realized and comes to life.
Thanks, Tori. That was great. Guys, we do have some time for questions. There are any number of them. I'll try to get to as many as I can. I actually think Liz touched on a question that we had from Michelle about, do I have to be good at drawing? So I think I'll go to the next question, which is from Kevin. Liz and Tori, go way back to design school. Is there a skill or a class that you wish you had taken more of when you were in design school? Something you missed?
Well, I cheated and answered, Kevin, but I what I didn't put in there is I'm going back to the dinosaur ages and definitely aging myself, because there wasn't technology when I was coming through. Everything was hand done. We were hand sketching everything. I think there was Photoshop and Illustrator 1.0. But fast forward is so critical. I think I wish I had just known and had more of a baseline in technology. I love that I was from the old school of design and I have that hand sketching knowledge. But I do think that is one thing I missed. And I wish I had just a better foundation out of the gates. I think today that looks completely different to students in school or coming out of school and engaging in their first job, because now it's all about 3D technology and how you're applying that to your pattern making skills, where we were drafting those by hand and draping, and now you're doing all that on computer aided design. So that's one of the things. And I would say sustainability is another. And I do think that that's something that I truly could have learned back in the dinosaur ages that is just so prevalent now. And just every customer and I think it's so important. It always comes up, whether we're recruiting or talking actually to our customers, is what are we doing? What is our footprint, and how are we contributing to a better world? So I think that's really, really important to really understand what can be your contribution, whether it's on how you're using your materials, wastage, or how it's getting to the customer, how the customer actually knows what you did, so you get the credit for it and the customer comes back, but it's of value and it's genuine.
Thanks, Tori. Liz, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have a design degree. I kind of had this fine art background, and I sort of hodgepodge put together a sort of design education. But I actually entered school as a dual degree student in business and in fine art. And then I got to college and I joined the fine art program, and I was like, these are my people. This is where everyone I think is interesting and cool and fun, and was really into art school. So after halfway through my freshman year, I was like, I don't want to do business anymore. And I would say that I wish I hadn't made that decision, because I do think business is really important. And one of the reasons why I wanted to be a designer is because I was really interested in the collaborative aspects of being creative for consumer product. And so I just think that if you have the opportunity to take any business classes and understand the business part of the industry, I think that that's really important. And it helps you just in dialogue with merchandisers and salespeople and just sort of speak the lingo and be able to communicate your ideas, and kind of, I don't know, just be heard from another angle rather than just design.
Thanks, Liz. Yeah, I mean, I think we've heard from you and from Tori and from Jenny that is part of your day, interfacing with the side all the time and defending, what you're working on. So that's super helpful. A more general question from Isha for any of you, but what's the process behind refining a collection and deciding what works and what doesn't?
So I think that, every season I start from a really like personal place of like, what is it that I need? Like, what have we been doing well? Like, what can we improve? And then as we're drawing and as we're developing the collection, I really believe in the pivot. So like things don't execute, like for me, it's a little different than it is for Tori. Like I can end up in a different place than I started, and like, that's okay, as long as the end is really fabulous. So you have to like believe in your instincts and see things and be like, okay, what I drew or what we all loved just looks terrible in this fabrication, or it's just not executed properly. And like, we got to pivot, and like, we have like 30 minutes to do it because it's a fitting. And just like, you have to be brave and make those decisions. You have to like hack a dress off and then be like, oh, I just took like 15 extra inches that I shouldn't have taken off, like maybe the pivot's not right then, but like, you have to just be able to do that. And so I think it's just like it's a process of like fine tuning and getting to that place. And like, that's why I brought up the Michael Kors example. It's like, she's wearing this, she's not wearing that. It's like, you're really like in the head of your customer. Like, what does she want? What works for her? And am I doing that? Or am I just sticking to like an original plan,
Yeah.
I 100% agree with you too, Liz, because I think, for Tori and I think we have more of like the mass customer, so I think for us, I always kind of start with, okay, where were we pushing her last year? Like, where did she go last year? Where did we lose her last year? So a lot of the times with my collections, it always starts with, did she respond to the risk we took last year? Did it totally bomb? Like, where do we go with how we're doing it? And I work with a bunch of different retailers too. So I'm tweaking for all these different retailers because I'm a vendor. So as a vendor, I also have a different viewpoint as a design director on how I'm building. I'm anybody from Macy's to Ross, so it's like broad. But, I think that's a huge part of our jobs is you have to look at your customer and what they're attracted to and not, and, maintain your top sellers from LY and then push it. And, like Liz said, sometimes you're like, oh my God, I'm obsessed with this color. And then you get it in and you're like, oh no. So like, you have to be like open and flexible and not take things too personally, because at the end of the day, like, it's going to look great in something that was your baby and you thought was going to be awesome. Sometimes it's a dog and it just doesn't work. And you got to go, oops, okay, we'll try this again and revamp, and maybe I can work it in a way that's like a tertiary color or an accent color. So 100% with Liz on, just being able to pivot. And I was just thinking of Friends when you said that.
Yeah. Well, I also like, what, I think that they're not your babies, like, because we do this 4 times a year, or however many seasons you guys do a year, I don't know. And you do so many styles that like, it's not precious. Like, as long as you're giving great product to your customer, it's like, you're moving on. Like next season, you're going to do it again. Like, something doesn't work, you can figure it out. Like a year later, you're going to be like, remember the thing that didn't work? Like, maybe it's because we cut it in jersey and it should be in a woven, or like, maybe it's really pretty in velvet, like, you just sort of like, it resurfaces. So that's what's fun about design. So you're just constantly moving, and you can play with ideas all the time.
Nice. Tori, anything you want to add about just what it means to refine?
Really, it's just, for me, editing along, I mean, they captured everything, but editing along the process too, and really living and breathing that customer and being in our head, like really, and it goes back to what we talked about with our gut instinct. I do think every designer and creative has that. And that's why we are the visionaries, are the ones that, release these trends or what's hot and new. So as you're going through that editing process, you're also making sure you're leading with what's next as well. As you're getting to your end goal or your end game too.
Nice. Let's see. I've got a lot of questions to choose from. For a designer of an eponymous label or a fashion student, how would you recommend balancing what you want to do versus what people want to see? A little more philosophical question, but.
I mean, I think it's, does anybody care what you want to make? You know what I mean? Like, is there an audience out there for you? Or is it just your vision? And like, if there isn't an audience, like, can you make the audience, you know? I mean, you know, Peter and I know each other because we've judged student work together. And I think sometimes it's interesting because in that format, sometimes students will present like their idea and like the concept and whatever. And then at the end, they're like, these are the clothes. I'm like, can we just like start with the clothes? Because like, I just want to be excited about the product. Like once like I'm excited about the product, then your story is really interesting. But if I'm not excited about the product, then, you know, and so it's like, you just have to make compelling product. So can you do that? You know, I mean,
and I think too, like, awesome point, Liz. And I think that also leads into something that I left out of the last question, which is, where's the white space? You know, that's a huge part of it. When you're making a collection, if you're saying you want to do something with your vision, to Liz's point, is it filling white space? Is it providing people with something that they're looking for? Because at the end of the day, the art's beautiful, but it has to sell. So, you know, otherwise there's no business. So, you know, I think finding that white space is a huge part of that. So agreeing with Liz and the white space thing.
Thanks, Jenny. This is a question from Sarah. In your experiences, Liz and Tori, what do employers look for most when hiring designers? How do I set myself apart?
Great question. For me, it's the creative energy. Really, you know, and it's tough when people come to Kohl's because, you know, they see us as this big corporate giant, and designers kind of sometimes want to present themselves more in this business kind of merchandising. And first and foremost, we want to be inspired by, you know, the work. We want to see, you know, the illustrations, the textures, what really, you know, got you to that place. So really, you know, we're designers for a reason. We're these creative creatures for a reason. So we're really showing up as, you know, as a designer, as so interviewing, and, you know, and what that means to your personal brand when you show up, and how can you take your personal brand and what you stand for, and how you're going to contribute to the company, to the customer, at large. But really, you know, and that's why I say it's, you know, and I remind my designers that every step in the process, I said, we're designers first. Sometimes we get really bogged down into, you know, all the minutia of business and sales and this, and next thing you know, you forget you're a designer on Wednesday. But first and foremost, we're creative. You know, we are the creatives. We are the starting and end points of the process. So you know, you've got to bring it, and you got to show that you can bring it, go above and beyond in that interview. Because it's definitely competitive, and, you know, we don't want to see, you know, basic or everyday. We want to see, you know, next and new, or something that we're like, whoa, I didn't even think of doing this, or, you know, it's pretty cool. Tell me more. So yeah, we want to be inspired too.
Thanks.
Yeah, I would just sort of elaborate. I think that's such a great answer. I mean, for me, it's like three things. Like, is the book fabulous? Does the person look cool and interesting? And like, are they interesting? Like, I'm always interviewing people, and like, when I'm interviewing, I'm just sort of like ticking away, like, do I want to spend time with this person? Are they interesting? Do they add to the conversation? Are they going to be collaborative? Are they annoying? You know, like, I'm trying to figure that out. Like, and I'm really inspired by people and like energy. So we're like, on Monday, I'm like, where'd you go? What'd you see? Did you go out? What party were you at? Like, where are you shopping? What don't I know? Like, I want to know all these answers, you know? Because I'm like older and I have a kid and I don't have time for it. And like, you got like excite me. So like in that interview, it's like, you know, is your book good? Do you look cool? And like, is the personality just like raging and fun? And is everyone gonna want to have you around, business people and creatives, et cetera, you know?
Thanks, Liz. Because I think we have time for one more. And again, this one I think could be for any of the four of you. Do you remember a day when you felt like you might not make it after all, career-wise? And what about a day when you knew you would make it? Nice question to end on, I think.
All the time.
Every other day.
Every day, you know.
Okay, Jenny, duly noted.
Yeah, no, I mean, I say that with a smile. I mean, it's, you know, as Liz said, this is a grind. It's a tough business, and it looks glamorous on the outside, but you know, it's not like you graduate and all of a sudden it's just like, woo, I'm a designer. Like, this is great. There's challenges every single day. And, you know, you just got to love what you're doing and trust your gut. Like Liz and Tori, you both have said repeatedly, like, you're in this job for a reason. Trust your gut, trust your instincts, trust yourself. And also know too, that like, I thought I was going to go work for Proenza Schouler, you know, and I wound up doing socks and home, but I really enjoyed my career, and each path, you know, it wasn't exactly what I thought, but it's been extremely rewarding. You know, it gave me an opportunity to be more on the business side, which I really love. It gave me an opportunity to really spend time in production, to work with packaging, to do an all-encompassing product from start to finish. So, you know, your career is going to take weird turns. Just go with it, you know, and trust your gut and trust yourself. I think that that's, you know, my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, you can't take it personal because, you know, Liz touched on this at the beginning. What we do truly is subjective. You know, I could think the color red is the most beautiful thing ever, and my merchants like could think it's terrible. So don't, you know, love with you what you do, but don't take it personal as well. Like, you know, you're in a knockout collection, have knockout collections, and then you're going to have one that just was like, oh my gosh, everyone hated her. Something didn't, but really love what you do.
Thanks, Tori. Liz, last word.
Well, I used to go to therapy on Tuesday mornings, and now I go on Thursday mornings. And when I went on Tuesday mornings, it was way darker than it is on Thursday mornings. So I think every week, you know, there's like challenges, and I think every week things can be difficult. And I think there are days where I'm like, you know, do I like what I do? Do I really want to be making clothes, or should I have just like been making art and like not reporting to anyone, you know? But I think overall, there's something about the product that I've designed in my career and the woman I'm designing for that I just adore her, and I want to make great things for her, and I have so much love for her, and I want to be her, and I'm always like, am I her? How am I her? So I just think that like what gets you over the hump professionally when you have low moments is like, is there really joy for what you're doing? And maybe not joy 100% of the time, maybe one week it's 65% of the time, but like, you know, or maybe sometimes it's 30%, but like a week later, like 2 weeks later, it's 100%, you know, and it outweighs each other. So like, you know, are you really like loving your job for the most part and loving how you're contributing?
Nice. Kinley, I can only say, having watched the video of you and your sister presenting, I think you have that joy too. So congrats for that. And I think so long as the net is joy, you're right path.
Yeah.
So guys, as I imagined, this was a wonderful session. So thanks to all of you, especially Tori, Liz, thank you both for everything you share with us. And Kinley, keep doing what you've been doing. And Jenny, thanks for guiding us through the prompt. For all of you watching, please tune in on Thursday. It's our session called Hello Fashion, a lesson on styling and the stylist-designer relationship, with celebrity Uber stylist Kate Young and designer Victor Glamote. It should be a good one at 12:30 on Thursday. This will be taped, so this will be made available to all the students who couldn't join, but to all of you who did, thank you so much. And again, thanks to all of you panelists. That was wonderful, really wonderful.
Thank you, ladies.
Good night.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Bye.